Thank you for joining us for our last day of internship week so far. It has been amazing. And today I'm really excited about this panel and discussion we're going to have around designing your own experience. We have some really great students and faculty here to talk to us about all the different things that kind of go into designing your own experience and what their experiences have looked like. So it's sure to be a great discussion. So I do want to get us started off just by introducing myself and my team. My name is Kayla Hamilton. I'm the coordinator for the experiential programs team here in the University Career Center. On the call and with me today is the rest of my team as well. We have Brianna Hobbs, who is the assistant director for the experiential programs team, and then both of our administrative assistants, Amy Howell and Alyssa Ungerman. Amy will be moderating our chat today. So if you have questions at any time, feel free to pop those in there. She'll answer them or we'll get to them live as well. For the first part during this presentation, if you can all just leave your cameras and mics off. And then once we get into our panel and Q&A area, you can feel free to either put questions in the chat or raise your hand and we'll call on you and you can speak to our panelists in person. I also want to introduce our partner for today, the Institute for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. We're really excited to be partnering with them today for this event. On the call, we have Paul Nichols, who's the Executive Director for the Institute. And unfortunately, Dresden couldn't be with us today, but she helped us put it together as well. So I wanted to introduce Dresden Goldberg, who's the Director of Programs and Operations, Campus Director for Blackstone, Launchpad, and Techstars. So these are some amazing people that you can talk to over in the Institute if you have any questions afterwards as well. So first, I want to jump into the subject matter. I want to kind of go over what it actually means to create your own experience. And there's a few different ways that we can look at this. But basically, it means when an opportunity isn't available, we make one. So if a company that you're interested in doesn't have internships posted or doesn't have opportunities available, or maybe there's something that you know you want to do, a skill that you want to be able to gain, and you just can't find the right opportunity for you. Maybe it's just that the particular company that you're looking at hasn't received the right proposal or it hasn't presented itself to that company. So you can make that happen as a student, as somebody who's passionate and interested in a particular area. We don't have to wait for internships to come to us. We can actually create them. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, how we can create opportunities, experiences, and internships when we're having problems finding them, we're struggling against adversity, things like COVID, and those opportunities seem like they're closing their doors to us. So this is the subject matter that we're really going to dive into today. So I have a few steps to creating your own experience, and this is going to look different for everyone that has created an experience for themselves. There's a lot of different paths to this. The tips and tricks that we'll have today are the most common path that we see that students take when they are creating their own experience. So number one is to really know what you want to do. Define some specific goals and learning outcomes for yourself and what types of projects might align with that. So with this, we really want to be doing kind of a self-assessment. Figure out what gaps we have in our education or our experience, what things we want to be learning, and the best way to be able to gain those skills. So what types of projects, activities, companies can provide that to you. So once we have an idea of kind of what we want to do, what skills we need to gain, what projects we could be doing, one of the most important pieces is knowing where we want to do that. So being able to research the field and finding specific companies that really align with your goals and have a need for your skills. So it's not just finding a company that can provide you with the best experience, it's finding a company that you can provide the best skills for. Finding a niche in a market or finding an area in a company where you see that you really fit into that mold. Next, once we have defined our goals and outcomes and we've researched what companies we might be interested in, the next piece is preparing our resume and our proposal. So this again is going to look different based on the different opportunities, but overall your proposal should really outline the details of what you want to do. So the different projects that you would like to do, or if you've defined a specific research project that works within that company, how the company can benefit. So again, going back to not just finding a company that can give you what you need, but also being able to provide for the companies. And then outlining your knowledge, skills, abilities, and your overall goals. So really being able to show your worth to a company or to a specific position or a research project so that they are just as interested in you as you are in them. And then lastly, and most importantly, reaching out. So half of the battle is designing the experience, and the other half of the battle is getting into that experience. So finding a good contact, sending your resume and your proposal to that person, and then following up and sending your gratitude and thanks. And this can be one of the most important parts and the most struggled with parts of this battle is finding that right person to reach out to in a specific company. And we have some good tips and tricks for this as well, and for this entire process. So along the lines of reaching out, use your connections. I say this, if you've been in any of my other seminars, I say this 500 times a day. 75% of experiences are gained through connections. And we, as university affiliated people and students, have a wide berth of connections at our disposal. So using things like LinkedIn or just word of mouth can go a really long way when you're searching for new opportunities. So reaching out to different people on LinkedIn at the companies that you're really interested in, or speaking to your peers who have held different internships and experiences, speaking to your faculty, to your professors, figuring out, what connections they have so that you can build a mutual connection with those people. Um, my next tip for you would be to make it easy on the employer. So we don't want to just cold call an employer and say, hey, I would like to do an internship for you, or hey, what can I do? What opportunities do you have for me? We need to make it easy on our employers. So spell out exactly what you're looking for and how you can be beneficial to the company and how you can do it. So if you have a specific project in mind, and maybe you're really interested in data science and you found this company that's doing this research project, and you can say, hey, I can do this data, I can clean this data, I can do this research, I can look at this user experience. And then you're spelling out for them without them having to kind of search through their own company to find a spot for you. You've found your spot in that area. And that's going to get you a lot further in your search when you're reaching out as well. So if you're doing a cold call or a cold email or cold LinkedIn message, you're going to get a lot further if you can say, hey, I've done this research on your company, I see how I can help here, rather than just saying, where do I fit, what opportunities do you have available for me, and throwing your resume at somebody. Next is do your research. And so this is kind of the common thread through all of this. So put on your investigative hat. Find the needs within a company that you can fill. So being able to find a company, do some research on that company, and say, I see that they're doing this project, or I see that they could really use my skills on this project, and being able to fill that need for them. And if you're not sure where to start on this entire process, an informational interview can get you a really long way. So, an informational interview can give you background on a company, and it can also help you build your connections. So, with an informational interview, this looks a little different now with COVID, but traditionally, you kind of email somebody and say, hey, I would love to sit down with you for 20, 30 minutes over coffee and just pick your brain. I love what you're doing in this area of the field. I'm really interested in the job that you're in or the company that you're with, and I want to learn more about it. Now, informational interviews are a lot more phone call based or video based, and that's fine. We can still gain a lot of opportunities from that. But again, finding the right people in the right positions to give you the information that you need in order to make informed decisions about the types of experiences that you need to pave your own way in a particular industry can go a really long way. So don't diss an informational interview. I think they're very important, especially for students right now who are struggling to find different internships and connections. Informational interviews can go such a long way. And so I want to give a quick shout out to Dresden, who again is not here, but she sent over a list of phenomenal resources. And Paul's going to go over some of these, I believe, at the end as well. So in order to kind of help you out on your way, if you're not sure where to start, the university provides a lot of great resources and organizations for you to participate in, to build your network with. So I wanted to highlight a few of these today that are offered. So number one is to participate in Comet X or Galaxy accelerators that are offered each semester. So even if you're not working on a business idea, you can still learn a lot about entrepreneurship and maybe learn to start something on your own or be able to build something of your own. Next is to participate in Blackstone Launchpad and Techstars Network. We're going to hear a lot about this today, so I'm really excited. But this will give you an opportunity to attend different events, speaker series, workshops, and receive really valuable mentorship for either your business idea or just kind of paving your way through an industry. Next is to join eClub or the Entrepreneurship Club, which is active on campus with events, mentorship, community surrounding, and all things entrepreneurship. And I'm happy to say that we do have the leader of the eClub with us today. So she's going to tell us a lot about this in a moment too. Next is to take an entrepreneurship course. So if you're kind of not sure about all things entrepreneurship, you're not really sure where to get started, you don't really know what entrepreneurship is, taking a course through through IIE can really be helpful. So courses are available through Innovation and Entrepreneurship, and they can provide really valuable insight into the different hard skills and really all of the aspects into starting your own venture. And then lastly, and this is kind of more of a tip than necessarily a resource, but don't discount working for a startup. So a lot of students tend to venture to the big four or, you know, the mighty 10 or whatever it is in your industry, but they always go for those big companies and they kind of, you know, put on the back burner maybe working for a smaller company or a startup. But often in a startup situation, you get to wear many different hats. You get really valuable hands-on experience, and you can really see how these different companies start from a ground floor. So if you have the opportunity to work for or intern for a startup, I would definitely suggest doing that. Or if you haven't thought about working for a startup, maybe looking into those different areas. So I think I've talked enough at this point. I would like to go ahead and introduce our panelists. So at this time, we'll kind of move into our panel. If our panelists can turn on their cameras and mics and everyone else can turn off their cameras and mics so that we can see our panelists, I'll introduce them softly and then I'll let them introduce themselves as well. So first we have Harsha Alpali, who is the eClub Head of Operations, and she also does growth and strategy for Cooklist Incorporated. We also have Jason Hendricks, who is the founder of Forgot or Not, and he is currently an MS in entrepreneurship, so he can tell us about his experiences with those courses that we were talking about. And then lastly, we have Veronica, who is the co-founder and CEO of IDA and also a Blackstone Launchpad Fellow. And then I also introduced Paul earlier, who is the executive director of the Institute. So he's here to kind of provide his insight and tell us about some awesome upcoming events that they have as well. So I will stop sharing my screen and go ahead and let our panelists tell us a little bit more about yourselves. So we'll start kind of in the order that I went. Harshini, if you want to go ahead and go first.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Harsha Alpali. I'm an undergrad senior majoring in cognitive science with concentrations in neuroscience and AI. My sophomore year, I, was at like a crisis of what do I do with my life? I don't know what's happening. And I, walked across the Blackstone Launchpad. And that was where I saw Paul, who you'll hear from later, presenting about, entrepreneurship and eClub. And I was like, what is entrepreneurship? What is this? And I went in and I remember sitting in the back seat and I just remember watching and hearing Paul just talk about entrepreneurship and all the resources we had on campus. And I decided, wait, I've got to try this out. So join eClub, which I think is a fantastic experience. Honestly, just joining a student organization that, that you share common values with, or maybe even skills that you want to really gain is so beneficial because after joining eClub, I've gotten to meet so many cool people, especially on campus, off campus, through networking events. They're also fun. And I think it really starts to make sense as to what really entrepreneurship is. I feel like a lot of people have like this very vague description of being an entrepreneur is just waking up one day, creating an idea and you become rich. Well, it's nothing like that. So joining this club and just being able to meet people, I think will give you a huge boost of support, whether it's an idea that you're trying to lead or just really you trying to figure out what you want to do. But yeah, I joined eClub and then, now I help run eClub, which has been a really fantastic experience. And I think within the past year, I got to, after attending a couple of pitch competitions, networking events, got to work with a startup called Cooklist. And it's been a super fun experience. And I'm excited to share that with you as we go on.
Thank you, Harshini. So next we'll hear from Jason.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the opportunity. So for me, it's been a little bit different type of experience. I served 4 years in the United States Army, and I'm currently studying in the Masters of Science program here at UTD with Innovation and Entrepreneurship, which, by the way, is an awesome program. This is my first semester, and I'm learning like a tons of information. So with me, with transition out the military, I was a 13 Delta, which means I shot a lot of rounds, to hit the target. And getting out, nobody really wanted to hire, a guy who just, sent a lot of rounds out. So I had a difficult time trying to find opportunities. So what I did was I created my own opportunity, and that opportunity is called Forgot or Not. And it aligns deeply with my why. I get to see and make people happy. So with Forgot or Not, for people who do not have enough time to shop for a gift, they call us. We'll send a driver to the mall, pick up the gift, and hand deliver it. The cool part about the concept is all of our drivers 10.5 iPad, so you can send a personalized video message even through COVID. And so on the end user side, we keep a camera crew and we record the entire experience from watching the video to opening up the gifts, and we share it. So for me, entrepreneurship is in my bloodline. I'm a graduate of Syracuse University, Texas A&M, Hillsborough Community College, all with the concentration of entrepreneurship. And since I've been here at UTD, man, it's been mind blowing. I'm in love. So for me, that's just been my experience so far.
Thank you so much. I love the passion. I'm excited to learn more about your company and your experiences. And so last but not least, Veronica.
Okay.
Veronica, I think you're muted again. She seems to be having some technical difficulties. We'll see.
Am I unmuted now?
You are. I can hear you.
Okay.
Perfect.
Great. So sorry about that. Okay. So hey everyone, I'm Veronica, and I'm excited to be here. And I'll echo what Harshini and Jason said, which is I'm in love. And I also kind of stumbled across this in sophomore year. So basically, at that time, I had no clue about startups or entrepreneurship or anything like that. And the Blackstone offers this accelerator that they do called Galaxy or Comet X. So in my sophomore year was like the inaugural cohort of it, was when they first launched it. So I just applied. I didn't have an idea or anything. I just applied with like, I want to learn, I want to be here. And so, yeah, that really brought me into the world of entrepreneurship. And I have to say, like, the entire trajectory of my college experience has changed because of that. And I've gotten to like do so many other opportunities, like whether it's be pitch competitions or even like going more into like the investment side of things and stuff and learning about VC and things like that as well. And I also founded a startup throughout this process. And like Kayla mentioned in the beginning, I was fortunate to be selected for a Blackstone Launchpad Fellowship over the past summer. So that was also a really great way to work with other entrepreneurs across the country and kind of get to see all the cool ways people are innovating and like feel part of this community. So I think UTD does a really, really excellent job of that. And I'm so happy that I discovered this aspect of our university that I feel like a lot of people don't know about. So now you're getting to hear about it, so you should get involved.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And Paul, I'll go ahead and let you introduce yourself as well and kind of tell us a little bit about your background and your position.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Glad you could make it. So I'm Paul Nichols. I am the Executive Director of the Institute for Innovation and Entrepreneurship at the University of Texas at Dallas, which means I have the longest title on campus. But I'm actually not an academic. I'm a practical, real world person. I've only been at UTD about 2 years now in a couple different roles. But I actually started at UTD before anybody else here. In 1990, I was part of the very first freshman class when we didn't have any of these buildings and there were only 100 of us in the entire undergraduate program. So I'm a little envious of everybody now and all the things that you have available to you. But when I was going through and doing my undergrad, I was kind of lost. I changed my major 3 different times. And I ended up creating my own degree plan because we didn't know what to call what this is. We didn't have a name for innovation back then. We certainly didn't have entrepreneurship courses. But now we don't know what to call it, and we built entire programs around it. But my background, as like a lot of entrepreneurs, is weird. I have not followed a straight and normal path. I was a co-founder of a startup, actually a venture capital fund that funded about 40 different startup companies. I worked for Texas Instruments for about 4 or 5 years as an internship. It was a very long internship while I was at UTD. I've been in intellectual property litigation for patent litigation cases. My job was to find expert witnesses to testify on patents. And I've also worked in national politics. I was on Ross Perot's campaign staff. I ran the internet portion of the campaign. So yeah, this week has been really, this is like my Super Bowl and World Series all wrapped up into one. I've been an absolute news junkie this week. And then I also was the CEO of a startup company. It was actually a spin out from the School of Engineering. And we raised over $1 million. We got our patents approved. We just ran out of money and things didn't go our way. But I was spending so much time at UTD, they said, hey, why don't you come over here and help us with the program? I said, well, sure. And one thing led to another, and here I am. So what you'll find in a lot of entrepreneurs is a series of happy accidents. But these accidents, you can absolutely load the dice in your favor. You know, be in the right place at the right time, knowing the right people, and having a little bit of patience and a little bit of training and skills can open up a lot of doors, and doors you never even knew existed. And so that's part of our job here, is to give you that training, give you that exposure. And just like with all the other panelists have said, like, they didn't know a lot of this, but they had a lot of passion and they had a lot of interest and they wanted to learn more. And it's going to be very fascinating to watch what they do with their careers over the next 10 years.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm excited to see that too. So now I do want to hear a little bit more from our student panelists and just what your experience has been like with creating with your own experience. Some of you have created your own companies. Some of you have done internships at startups. So what did that path look like for you? How did you kind of stumble into the right places? What opportunities did you take advantage of and what really helped you with that? And so Harshini, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I think before I start is before you even go out and find an internship that you want to apply for, I think it's really important that you take time for yourself to really figure out like things that you really like and things that you don't like. I think it's a practice that too many times people don't do. I think especially right now, there is a lot of pressure in everybody just trying to find an internship because it's kind of like, if your friends are doing it, it's like, why am I not doing it? And you're just in this rush of like, I just got to apply. And sometimes you might not even be happy at what you want to do, rather than you just want it on your resume, which might satisfy that temporary desire of I just need an internship. But in the long run, it's your time, right? It's your time that you're putting in, and you really have to. One thing I've learned, I think, these past 2 years is that your time is very valuable, and I know you hear that everywhere, but just being able to guard your time and being able to see where it's going is a really important skill to have, because then you'll realize, okay, is the decision I'm making, is this helping me grow? Is this something that I need? And so when you go ahead and do apply for internships, with that sort of clarity, you don't have to know exactly what you want to do, but as long as you know what you don't want to do, I think is a much better strategy. Like, I had a list of things I absolutely do not want to do when it comes to a career. And I think that really led me to be very picky as to, the certain skills I wanted to gain over time, right? So if there is in the long run, if there's a job or a field that you really want to excel in, chances are you're not going to just jump right there, right? You need to figure out what are some initial steps you got to take to get there. So whether it's skills or whether it's, just really building up your professional and personal, soft skills, hard skills, just really listing that out on a piece of paper and saying, okay, like here is where I can get this experience. Here's where I can get this experience. When you do go, when you do apply for a job or you are applying for, an internship or whatever, you can tell someone like these sort of skills I gained from this experience. And I think being able to communicate that and being articulate about it is going to be a very important skill, because at the end of the day, you can put in so much time, so much effort, and just, trying to get through this. But it's really that sort of communicative skill that is going to set you apart of being concise and being clear on where it is that you gain a certain experience. And part of that does come with, going back to this entire topic of creating your own path, right? It's very easy to kind of follow the path of others that, if somebody did an internship or somebody did a career, they're like, okay, they already set the path, I'm just going to follow it. And a lot of times what, based from personal experience and what my friends have experienced, is that it's not going to work for you, because what one person may have designed may not be what you're wanting to do. And so it can definitely be a little intimidating. For me, that was my spring 2019 semester where I just was like, okay, what do I do now? And so all of my friends had their own internships. I'm like, do I just like follow what these people are doing, or do I actually want to do something different? And I took the other path. Definitely had some moments where I was like, oh, like I don't think this is going to connect. But I think looking back, I'm so glad that I did that, because you'll see over time is with uncertainty, when you do embrace that sort of uncertainty that comes with creating your own path, there's a lot of freedom to explore. There's a lot of freedom to try. And like Paul said, everything just turns into a happy accident, right? You learn so much in the process. And one of my biggest things that I used to tell myself is, whenever you're in doubt, just take one small step, right? Just take one small step, you're moving forward. Because if you stay still for too long, chances are your own doubts and fears are going to take over. And that's so true when you come and apply for internships, or even like trying to get networked with startups. Is that you want to give yourself the best chance. Like, you have the skills, you know you're good for it. So you don't want to let external decisions, external happenings influence that. So for me, I think the way that I kind of went through is, after I got more involved with the Institute for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, met a bunch of really cool people, including Paul, Dresden, and Sarah, Brian, and all of these people have such great experiences that they're so willing to share. If you just really sit down with them and, say, hey, this is what I'm interested in. Could you, offer some advice? And from there, I think being able to attend networking events, or just being able to attend, like, if there's a company that you're really interested in, attend their virtual events, right? Even in COVID right now, a lot of startups or a lot of companies have virtual networking events or even community events. And chances are there's probably some key decision makers that do attend those events. So it's a really great way for you to just introduce yourself and like who you are and what you'd like to do. And like Kayla mentioned in the earlier presentation, it's always really important to understand the value that you bring to someone in a meeting, or even in like a job that you do. And the only way you're going to get to do that is really if you spend time with yourself and say, I'm Harshini, these are the skills that I'm really, really good at, and here's what I can offer you. Or just being able to offer that initial feedback of a product or a website or something of that sort. Like, you don't have to be an expert at something to offer feedback. I think at the end of the day, everybody's looking for feedback, for improvement. And so within my journey, I think just being able to take some time and say, hey, I think you could improve in X, Y, Z, and just being able to receive feedback, I think helped a lot for me. Whether it was the startups I applied to, or even just like the startups I got connected with. And I think over time you'll really see that there's nothing really stopping you from doing what you want to do. And I know I sound a little cheesy right now, but there really is nothing stopping you, right? If you really ask yourself, like I used to ask myself that question all the time, like, okay, if I'm like, okay, I want to apply to this, and I'm like, no, I might not be a great fit. I'm like, wait, what's stopping me, right? Just ask yourself what's stopping you. And the more you do that, you'll realize that there's really nothing apart from just you and your thoughts. So I think at the fundamental step, you have to take time to become more self-aware, to kind of have that clarity of what you want to do, what you don't want to do. And then over time, just having these sort of conversations with people, whether it's your friends or whether it's mentors that you really want to surround yourself in, I think will definitely create such a new experience, because who you surround yourself with and the values that you really see in other people will make such a huge difference in the type of opportunities that come your way. So I think you have to take that initiative to be in that sort of environment. And I think it definitely does make a huge experience, because you have all these different opportunities come by. And the biggest lesson I've learned through Paul, through Dresden, just like in all of our little chats and meetings, is that I think Paul said this once, I remember in our first meeting, he said, opportunity always exists if you look right. And I'm just saying that to yourself over and over again. I think how you look at things, how you look at life, how you look at, your situation and the attitude that you have towards it will definitely change your entire experience, whether it's in college or even out of college. So there's my issue.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was so well put. And you made a lot of really, really great points. And I want to hit on a couple of them just so that everyone that's here can hear them as well. So that self-assessment piece is really, really important. Knowing kind of what you want in an opportunity, knowing what skills that you can bring. And one of the best ways to do that is to really kind of sit down with yourself, like she said, and, think about the different skills that you have, what you want to do, and how you can benefit from different types of opportunities. And the next thing that she kind of hit on early on was the importance of experience for experience sake, and that all experience is learning experience. So even if you have a negative kind of outcome from an experience, you find out oh, I did this experience just to find out that that's not the path that I want to take, that's still something learned. And that's something that I always tend to kind of reiterate in all of the different types of events that I do as well, because I think students tend to get really bogged down by an experience that doesn't turn out the way that they want. But then you found out that that's maybe not the path that you want to take. There's so many times, even in my own career, that I ended up in a position, a job, an internship, and I was like, oh, this is not what I want to do down the road. And that's fine, because then I found out that that's not the way to go for me. So I think that's really important note to hit on that one. So thank you so much for sharing that. And Jason, I do want to hear from you too, because you actually started, your own business from the ground up, and you have kind of a wealth of knowledge that went into that beforehand, starting it a little bit later after you had, been in the military and doing that. So I want to hear from your experience specifically, what were the steps that led to that? What made you want to make that decision to lead that path?
Sure. So for me, I always like to share my experiences in more of a story format, right? So for all the people that are watching, I want you to think about your favorite action movie, right? Because all action movies have something in common, right? They typically have a star, and the star always, they all this different crowd in order to be victorious, right? At the end, right? And it's the mindset, right? Rather if it's the action star being chained underwater, and they have to use a toenail clipper to pick the lock, or use a toenail clipper to cut the cord to survive, or even if it's maybe having a friend in Cuba that they need a safe house just to go and hide out, it's being resourceful, right? And to me, that's been my journey, right? As an entrepreneur, finding the right resources, capitalizing on your resources, adapting to problems, right? Determining if you will adapt and overcome, right? It's having that mindset, right? Will I quit because it's too hard? Or will I just keep going, even through COVID, right? It's just having that mentality. So for me, it's just kind of being my mindset of just doing whatever I need to do to keep going, to keep pushing the culture forward, following my passion. And if you do something that you're in love with, for me, I'm in love, right? So if you do something in love, nothing can make you quit, no matter what it is. I've been told no, I can't even count, let's say maybe 1,000 times, right? But what I'm learning from being told no is a lot of people that say no, sometimes they don't say no as an N-O, sometimes they say no as in K-N-O-W. They just don't know enough, right? So maybe sometimes you want to do that self-assessment and say, you know what? How can I educate this person to know that I'm actually bringing value? Because you can never go wrong when you're following that passion. So if I was to leave with anything, on this topic right here, I would just say you are the action star of your own movie. So you can create the results. You can pick the lock. You can of your network. Capitalize on that. Just it's about who do you know, what do you know, and what do you have. So if you capitalize on that, you'll be straight. Sorry, but that's that passion talking.
I love the passion. I love the passion. Keep bringing it. I love it. No, it's really important. Again, you hit on a lot of really great that we'll get into more about, pushing through barriers and kind of not letting your own self get in the way of your own success. And I think that's really important too. And so, Rika, I want to hear from your experience specifically with the Blackstone Launchpad, especially in your experience with kind of your own startup. So tell us a little bit about that journey.
Hello. Okay, I'm back. Yeah, so the Blackstone Launchpad journey and then the whole journey of how this began, I would say in the beginning, something I see so many peers doing is they think about college as an end goal. When I graduate, I need to have an X amount of salary and this job, right? But I really think of college as a 4 years where you just get to experiment with stuff and just figure out what you want in life. And I just think that approach has served me so well because I was never concerned about this end goal. I was just enjoying the process. And when you're not so focused on the reward and you're working on the process, the reward comes naturally. And I found that to happen in so many different areas of my life where I've just put in 110%. In the beginning, you guys, I did 3 internships consecutively. 2 of them were completely unpaid and I did them for 9 months, right? So most people wouldn't do that, right? People might say oh, why would you do that? Go do a paid internship. But then at that time, like I needed the experience and I wanted to do it. And that actually led to like an idea that led to me founding my startup. So it's really weird how like life will take you in different turns if you focus on the process and not this end goal, this reward. I need to graduate, I need to get a job. And because you'll do that in the process of figuring out what you want. So what happened is basically, yeah, I started the startup after Galaxy, which is the cohort I was mentioning before in my sophomore year. So we've been working on it for about a year and a half now, I would say. So this past summer was my Blackstone Launchpad Fellowship experience. So that is basically imagine the Blackstone we have, but it's across multiple universities in the country. So they did a student fellowship this past summer. And yeah, it was really, really great. I actually got to be on a call with a CEO I really look up to, who is the founder of Allbirds, the shoes, if you're familiar. And that was super awesome. And I got this like really introduced to this like technique of like tracking your goals. So we had this like 8-week spreadsheet, and you basically look at what did I want to do, what were the expected results, and what actually happened. And usually what actually happens is not what you expected, and that's fine. um, and like Jason was saying, the amount of times like right now you just like brush off rejection, like another rejection, just delete the email, so it's totally fine. And so yeah, I would say like if you're a student and if you're on this call right now, like you clearly want to do something different, I would say one, don't have imposter syndrome. And I know that's really hard because you think you're just a student, but trust us, like it's actually a leg up to be a student because so many more people are willing to respond to you and take your call if you're a student. Like the other day, so we host a podcast for our startup, right? So I just reached out to this founder who I don't know. He has raised like a really successful startup, raised millions of dollars. I just reached out. I'm like, hey, I'm a student. Do you want to be on my podcast? And he responded, sure. And I really didn't, I was like, I have to try. So as a student, you really get to like land in these people's messages and they'll respond to you. And the other thing I'll say is, Jason really touched on no, right? So I like that, like the KNOW. And I want to stress that your no is also just as important. So don't think because you're a student, like I have to beg for stuff, I have to be desperate, I need to say yes to everything that comes by. So like Harshini said, and Paul were saying, like opportunities everywhere, right? So don't be afraid for you to say no. Like I've said no to many things. Like I've quit things that weren't working out for me because it didn't like leave me fulfilled or satisfied. And that's totally fine. So don't think like because you're in a student position, you don't have leverage. Like you totally have leverage to create your own path. And sometimes it starts with saying no, so you free yourself up for other opportunities.
Again, very well put. All of you are really kind of dropping these gems for this. So I'm hoping that our attendees are really like listening and taking notes. And I do want to hit on one point that you had kind of made in there about mentorship and how important mentorship and the connections that we make are in these different types of experiences. And even through the university, there's many different programs and institutions and organizations offered that provide mentorship for you. And so the important part is kind of taking that first step, that reaching out and being able to know, this is the person that I want to hear from, or this is the person that I would like mentorship from, and building those connections. So it's all going to come back to that different type of mentorship and connection. And kind of speaking on mentorship and advice, for all of you that have kind of created these experiences for yourself, if you kind of had to boil it down to the best advice that you received while you were on your journey, whether it be from a mentor, whether it be from a program that you took advantage of, what would you say? Harshini, I'll throw it back to you if you want to kick us off on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing to really understand that I've been told multiple times is, I think there was a question in the chat that it's going to connect to what I'm saying, is a lot of times when you are applying for internships, you might feel like you might not have experience, or you're like, maybe, I'm a freshman or I'm a sophomore, I don't have enough experience to try this, blah, blah, blah. And it's really easy to let yourself believe that fact if you don't, if you have to take a step back. And a lot of the mentors that I've had have told me is everybody starts as a beginner, right? Like even the biggest CEO on this planet was a beginner at one point. And if you think about it, it kind of levels the playing field almost, because everybody starts as a beginner. They probably were in the same shoes that you're in, worried about, if I'm good enough, or, do I have the right skills? And so for me, one of the biggest advice is something that actually my dad always tells me is you have to go step by step, right? I think a lot of times, to go back to what Veronica said, once you graduate, everybody just wants to land the biggest role at the biggest four companies, make X amount of salary. You just want to go up, right? But rather than just trying to shoot straight up, like going step by step is going to be a lot more easier and a lot more beneficial, because if you do fall, you're only falling on one step rather than just falling from like a big height of like a job that you might not necessarily be ready for. I know that a lot of my friends, when they did apply to a certain job, have landed like really big companies, and in their first 30 or 60 days just realize like, wait, I'm not ready for this like sort of pressure in this sort of like big space, just because you haven't really built yourself up there. And I think it's really important that you go step by step and you build skills in each step that you're able to slowly go up. I mean, it's not a race. None of this is a race. I think that's a huge thing that you really have to tell yourself. And, I will be accountable to that. Like, I've felt at times where I just have to run faster just so I can like meet the pace of everybody else. But you're in your own lane. You go at your own pace, and you really have to understand that if you try to match the pace of somebody else, you are going to get hurt in the process, whether that's mentally or just feeling like you're not enough for these roles. And that's totally not true, right? Everybody has an experience. You have certain experience that shaped who you are. You have certain skills, and you really have to wake up every day and say that I'm enough, and I'm going to be able to prove to people that I am enough. And so you have strengths, you have skills, and I think a lot of internships, a lot of roles that you just apply on LinkedIn or Indeed may not necessarily know that particularly, and that's the reason why I really want to emphasize this idea of connections and being able to go meet people who you can actually share your story with, get advice from, that they can really vouch for you at the end of the day, saying, hey, like, I have Jason and Veronica for this role. Like, I think they'd be great through the interactions that you've had. I think you owe it to yourself to give that chance for other people to hear your story. And I think that a lot of companies don't really expect, like, especially freshmen and sophomores, to just know everything. I think what they care more about is, one, are you coachable? Are you willing to learn? And do you really follow this path of continued improvement, right? Like, and that's something that I personally, for me, is like an inner value, is rather than just trying to meet an end goal, are you continuously improving from time to time? And being able to assess that, I think, is a really important thing to do. So yeah, not a lot. I don't think a lot of times, like your first and second year, in my opinion, is the best times to do internships. Really just experiment random things, because if you are willing to learn, if you are willing to be involved and put 100% in a role, and you're able to communicate that well, I think there's so many opportunities offered to you. You just have to have that mindset of, I'm someone that will continue to improve, and then I am, skill building is another thing. And like I said, just take small steps. It's not a race. You're in your own lane, and you have to go at your own pace. So that was the biggest advice, I think, for me.
Awesome. Thank you. And Jason, I'm going to throw the question to you, but I'm going to put a little bit of a spin on it. Yeah. Thinking about the advice that you've been given, what advice would you give kind of your younger self going into this journey? What's that one piece that you would really tell yourself?
Sure. Do it now. Do it now. Apply action now, right? And not just action to say, hey, I'm going to do this one time. No, apply rapid action. Like when you got to plan rapidly, just steady, hit it hard, just rapidly. That's the advice that I would give my younger self. A lot of times we want to do all this planning and researching, which is great, but I'm sure it's a million people out here that thought of Uber, but you have to apply action right now, rapid action. So that's the advice that I would give my younger self. Apply action.
Awesome. Love it. Again, passion all over the place. And then, Veronica, I'll kind of throw the same question to you, whether the best advice that you received or what advice you would kind of give to your former self. Sorry, you're muted again.
Okay, guys, sorry. I'm so sorry about that. Anyway, as I was saying, having some tech difficulties. I love this panel because if I had to pick 3 lessons, I would pick what I'm about to say and what Harshini and Jason just said. So that's awesome. So the advice, and I'm going to combine this with like a quote I really love, right? So if you want something you've never had, you have to do something you've never done. And I love that. And I would say that to myself too, because I think it's so hard, right? You want to do something, but you're like, wow, I don't have experience doing that. But until you get out of your comfort zone, you're never going to realize what you're capable of. And I know that sounds super cheesy, but let me give you like a practical example that I'm experiencing right now. So with our startup, we grew our team recently, right? So I'm like, I've never led a team before. I mean, I'm not counting like group projects here, guys. Let's be honest, right? So yeah, I'm like, I've never led a team before. Like, I haven't led development before. Like, how is this even gonna go? And so, but then here I was faced, right? So now I'm suddenly ending up leading a team of 15 people that I'm in this position. I have to do it, obviously, right? And I'm super grateful for that chance. But if I told myself, like, you've never done it, then until you do it, you're never going to have the experience. So sometimes you just have to dive into the deep end and just figure it out. That's my policy anyway, because I'm like a really impulsive person. But even if you're more like, you want to be like more strategical about it, yes, plan, prepare, gear yourself up for it. But until you do something that you haven't done before, you're not going to see the progress that you're hoping to see because you're just going to be in that comfort zone. So I really encourage you, probably when I'm speaking, there's something that popped up in the back of your mind that you're like, oh yeah, that thing, do that thing right after this call.
Love it. These are such great little pieces of advice to give to our students. And we're going to have time for questions here in just a second. So be thinking about questions, attendees. Throw those in the chat. If you want, you can go ahead and raise your hand and we'll start taking them. I am going to go ahead and throw it to Paul to talk about some of the different opportunities that are coming up and available at the Institute for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. So go ahead, Paul.
Sure. Thank you, Kayla. All great points by all the panelists. We could spend the next 6 hours going into the details of all of this. But there's an important point that really needs to be made, and that is, even if you don't have an idea for your own startup now, or if you're not necessarily confident enough to be able to do this yourself, that's totally fine. For us, it's all about the entrepreneurial mindset. It's the way of thinking. It's the way of problem solving and building teams together and going out and providing real value. And I absolutely guarantee you, large companies are looking for people with this kind of training. Government agencies, even military agencies, even branches of the military are looking for people with an entrepreneurial mindset because they know they need that kind of skills in their organizations. So that's why we call this innovation and entrepreneurship. So it's like corporate innovation along with doing your own thing. The skills are fundamentally the same. The only thing that's different is really the environment. So you can apply this to all sorts of different internships, different types of companies, different types of career paths. And with that, we got some amazing fun things coming up for you guys. So I absolutely encourage you to take advantage of our programs or our courses. We're trying to make this as open and reachable by any student on campus, regardless of your career path and your interests. First coming up is our Big Idea competition on November 19th. This is our annual business competition on campus. It's our version of Shark Tank. And for many, many months, the students and the staff and alumni who are applied have been working really hard on their pitches. And we're going to have Mark Cuban as keynote speaker. So absolutely tune in on the afternoon of the 19th and watch for more details on that. And then coming up in the spring semester, you've probably heard Veronica talk about Galaxy and Kayla mentioned Comet X. These are boot camps we do every semester. They're 8 weeks long. We meet once a week. They're free, but it's not for credit. You do it on your own time. But we give you some of the fundamentals, like what's an elevator pitch? How do you actually go out and raise money? How do you make sure that you're providing a good value to your customer? And so this is a good way to just like get your toes in the water. But you do have to apply early. There's limited seats, and so we can't accept everybody. So definitely, when the next spring semester starts, apply to Comet X and Galaxy on our website at innovation.utdallas.edu. Another thing that you need to make sure you understand, we've talked about mentors. You can go to our website, which is innovation.utdallas.edu. If you ever want to talk to a mentor, we have over 100 mentors, volunteers who registered and signed up who are students. And these folks have various backgrounds in business or certain industries or certain technologies. So let us know the kind of help you're looking for, and we'll do our best to pair you up with someone. And we also have guest speaking events throughout the year. through our connection with Techstars, which is a nationwide program. We do a lot of events with them. So it's all about providing you with opportunities to meet new people, learn new and exciting things, and add more tools to your toolbox. Regardless of what your interest is, regardless of what kind of degree you're going after, these are lifelong skills that will help you. Ultimately, we all need to learn how to promote ourselves and sell our ideas and sell our value to our employers or to our customers. So everybody can benefit from this in some way. And then obviously we have a lot of courses that we offer every spring, summer, and fall. Definitely look into those. I highly recommend ENTP 3301, Innovation and Entrepreneurship, where we will pair you up with a team of students and you get to work on your own idea all semester long. But we teach you a lot of the fundamentals of how to develop that into a real business. But like I said, there are corporate recruiters out there who are absolutely looking for people, and I guarantee you will be asked, tell us about a time you did something innovative, and tell us about a time you worked on a team of people with different backgrounds. And that's all about what we try and do with the Institute and all of our programs.
Thank you so much for all of those great resources, Paul, and all of that advice. So I do want to open it up we have time for a couple of questions. So if anybody does have any questions, feel free to raise your hand or put those in the chat. One did come in earlier. Harshini, you kind of hit on this one, so I'll open this one up to the panel, whoever would like to take it. But the question is, do internships expect students to be very capable already in the field, or do they usually understand that we only know as much as first and second year students? So again, I'll kind of open that up to whoever would like to take that.
I'll weigh in a little bit. Yeah, companies absolutely know you're still in college, you're still learning. And that's why they do internships. These are not regular, normal jobs. They don't expect you to know everything. Otherwise, they'd hire you for a real job. But they also realize that it's up to them also to provide you some real world training. And so they often use the internships as like their own testing ground too, to see like, hey, could this person be a good fit for us down the road? And so they will stay in touch with you. So both the student and the company are getting something out of this trial period. But you do still have to have a minimum certain level of skills to get in the door. But this is also like things like the soft skills that we don't really teach in courses, but like how to communicate well, how to be professional, how to act in a certain situation. These are all important things that will absolutely help you. They know that you're still learning, but they want to be part of that learning process.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'll open it up. I was gonna say, if anybody else wants to kind of take that too, I would reiterate what Paul said though. If I had an answer to that question, that's what it would be. Go ahead, Veronica.
Yeah, I think Paul's answer was like comprehensive and excellent. The one thing I would add to it is if you are like a freshman, sophomore student, I think that's a great time to actually work for a smaller company or a startup because they're going to be a lot more flexible and you can try on different roles and just kind of like take ownership. It's not going to be a rigid structure. Like I like being creative and like kind of going with the flow. So I think working in that kind of environment, you can just kind of take ownership of a project. So if you are concerned about like a big corporation, rules and like technology and stuff like that, go for a smaller company,
So I would like to kind of chime in on that too. I think maybe instead of maybe if you're afraid, not saying that you are, of the no, because maybe you don't think you have the experience, maybe create your own project, right? And you become the subject matter expert and you be confident that you have the capability of being able to perform that role. And you share, with the employer exactly what you do know. And that'll show that you're willing to learn on your own. That shows a lot about a person. You took it upon yourself to take this project on just to prepare for this internship.
Yeah, and if there's one more thing I do want to add on to what everybody said is a lot of times you don't have to have all the skills that you need to excel at politician. But one thing I do want to mention is to really just be aware of the field in general, right? If there's an internship in a field like tech or like fashion, retail, or things like that, you don't necessarily have to know every skill that you need to succeed in there, but just knowing how is the industry, how's it going? Like what are people doing? What are the key players there? Like what are they doing? What is your insight on it? How do you think that field's going to grow? Because these are the sort of conversations that really show that one, you're interested in that field too, it just adds to your work, because a lot of times when you are able to comprehensively explain, like, this is where I think this field is headed, these are the new things happening, right? Like just following up with the news on, companies that you're really interested in a certain field. I think when you do get asked that question in an interview, it's like, what do you think about our company or this field in general? It really does take your answer to another level, because a lot of times people, I feel like, have like this like standard answer of like, this is who I am, this is why I want to do this role, blah, blah, blah. But if you're able to just actually open that conversation up to like, here's where I think this field is headed, or like, this is what I think in the future, like possible innovations or changes that could happen, I think it does show that you're well aware, you're keeping up with the trends, and you're really involved. And I think for the other person who's listening to you, it's a good indicator that, hey, like this person is, one, they're not just here just for the job, they're actually interested in what we're doing. So I just want to add that.
Thank you so much. So we have time for maybe one more question. So if there's any more questions out there, again, feel free to raise your hand or post them in the chat.
Don't be shy.
Yeah, don't be shy, please. This is the time to ask those questions. And I'll also encourage, if any of our panelists want to drop in like an email or a LinkedIn that maybe, our attendees can reach out to you by to send you questions or follow-ups, feel free to do that as well, so that our attendees can link with you there. Because again, it's all about those connections, right? All right. I'm not seeing any more questions at this time. So that being said, I want to thank our panelists for being here. You guys dropped some amazing knowledge on us today and some great advice. So I'm really, really thankful for you for joining us, and for all of our attendees, thank you for coming in and participating as well. We do have one event left today as part of Internship Week. Like I said, most of our events are recorded and will be posted on our YouTube page in the coming weeks. But if you are interested, our last event of Internship Week will be today at 3 o'clock. It is our Arts and Technology Employer Industry Panel. So you can come hear from some different industry leaders in the arts and technology sphere, and about how they got to where they are, in the sense of internships and education and things of that nature. So I encourage you to go to our website and check that event out, to register, or on Handshake. Again, thank you to our panelists. This was a really worthwhile experience, and I think all of our attendees really got a lot out of it. So thank you all so much, and have a great day.
Have a great weekend.
Enjoy.